All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Sanusi Lawal from Talent Hive. So this is our second lecture in cybersecurity essential, and we are going to continue from the last chapter. In the last chapter, we discussed about cybersecurity. We look at cyber criminals, and we have seen some of the tips and tricks on how one can protect, his personal data as well as organizational data, and why it is important for us to understand the need of cybersecurity. So in this lecture, we are going to look at cybersecurity cube, where we shall describe the 3 dimensions of the Macuba cube cybersecurity. We are going to look at CIA triad, CIA as short for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I believe we can remember these terms, right? From the introduction to cybersecurity.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, and then we shall also discuss about different states of data and differentiate the 3 states of data. Then cybersecurity countermeasures. We are going to compare the types of cybersecurity countermeasures. And then we shall lastly discuss about information technology security management framework. In that, we are going to describe the International Standard Organization cybersecurity model, this the ISO model. So this is what we are looking forward to, achieving in this chapter. So going forward, we are going to start with the 3 dimensions of cybersecurity cube. In cybersecurity, if you can remember, we are dealing with a lot of data, right? So because we are dealing with a lot of data, organizations actually collect data of different entities, partners, client, and what have you. So in that case, we have large amount of data which yields to a different field of study or field of interest called big data as a result of enormous IT devices that we have, which actually also bring about emerging technology called Internet of Things. So when you look at the CIA triad, confidentiality, availability, and integrity, this forms the fundamental background of cybersecurity. Hence, it is important for us to look at these 3 dimensions and how we can balance them together. So the principles of cybersecurity, first dimension of the cybersecurity cube identifies the goals to protect the cyber world. What are the goals of securing the cyber world? The goals identified in the first dimension are the foundational principles of the cybersecurity world, okay? So in confidentiality, we identify the goals, and these goals are, of course, the fundamental, or rather the foundational principles of the cybersecurity world. And these 3 dimensions are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The principles provide focus and enable cybersecurity specialists to prioritize actions in protecting the cyber world. So when you critically analyze or you understand the mix, between these 3 dimensions, that will give you a proper strategy and a proper framework to actually use and implement cybersecurity in the organization you happen to find yourself. Okay. The acronym CIA is actually used to basically help us remember the principles or the 3 dimensions. Now, when we are dealing with information technology assets and infrastructures, we believe that there is a stage in which a data is being created. There is a stage in which a data is being processed or a processing is being carried out on a data. And there is a different situation whereby a data is at rest, meaning that that data is just stored in a storage device. When we say storage device, we are referring to IT devices that allow us to store data temporarily or permanently. And what by temporarily, what do I mean? Like in the moment, I'm presenting this particular information, and this slide is actually open in my computer as an active process. So at the moment, it is stored on RAM of my device, random access memory. And when the computer is down, I mean, when the light is off, when I off this computer and re-on it again, I'm not going to see the slide. I have to go back to where I actually stored it and then open it, because presently this slide is stored on read access memory, which is volatile in nature, okay? It is volatile in nature. Volatile in the sense that it loses power, it loses the content in it when the power is lost. That is the volatility aspect of it. While storage devices, for example, hard drive, is a non-volatile. Even if, I mean, you off the computer and on the system again, you will definitely just navigate to the directory where you know that you store that information, you stored your files on. You just go and open it and you're gonna access it. It doesn't lose the content in it because of loss of power. Okay, so I hope we'll get the difference between the volatile and non-volatile as it relates to storage system. Now, state of data, cyber world is a world of data. We obviously know that, because it is actually a term that people used to say, data is the next fuel. It is actually the fuel of our generation. So therefore, cybersecurity specialists focus on protecting data. So that is the prime focus of the specialist. The second dimension of the cybersecurity cube focuses on the problems of protecting all of the state of data in the cyber world. Remember, the first is actually identifying, goals, and how we can use that as a foundational principle in the cybersecurity world. So the second dimension, which is integrity, is basically focusing on protecting all the state of data in the cyber world. These three possible states are data at rest or in storage. Data could be at rest. This is state number one. The data at rest is actually data that is in storage, okay? It is stored in a memory of the computer, or in the memory of your mobile devices, or in the memory of your router, or in the memory of the server. This is data at rest. Data in transit, when data is actually, data is in transit, so we actually classify that as data in transit. Data in process, that is when that data is actually being processed. So I hope we'll be able to remember this. These are three different sets of data: data at rest or in storage, data in transit, or data in process. Now, we have to actually mechanize ways. There are already standardized and mechanized ways of safeguarding, our data. So now we talk about first and second dimensions. Now the third dimension of cybersecurity, Sorcery Cube, defines the types of powers used to protect the cyber world. The cube identifies the three types of powers, okay? The technologies, policies and practices, and people. Of course, just the way we know, the CIA triad contains confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So the confidentiality has to do with the technologies that is deployed on the devices and product available to protect information systems and fend off cyber criminals, all right? Okay, then policies and practice. This has to do with procedures, and guidelines that enable the citizens of the cyber world to stay safe and follow good practices. So what this means, how actually, the SOPs, there is standard operating procedures that, is available by the employees, or the citizenry of a country or a state, to follow as a guideline, which will enable them to become very informed and aware about the best practices as it relates to, threat and vulnerabilities that could affect, them personally or the organizations they work for. The last one is people, that this actually, improve on the knowledge and awareness about their world and the dangers that threaten their world. So when we look at it critically, to ensure confidentiality of data, we have to deploy so many technologies, and then to make sure that, we protect the integrity of the data we are actually in custody of. We have to, mechanize policies and deploy practices and procedures, that will allow that integrity of data to be intact. That is part of the measures. Okay, and availability, data is actually going to be available, more available, if our employees or staff or citizens, are very aware on the different ways that, cyber criminals use to steal information and to gain unauthorized access, to the data. Now, from the other end, when we look at the information states, information could be in storage. Firstly, it could be in transmission. At that moment, it is in actually transmission state. And it could also be in a storage or in a processing state. So this cube that we're looking at is, we actually have the security principles themselves, the countermeasures, and the information state, right? So this summarizes the CIA triad and Mark Cube, principles, as well as different data state. I hope it is very, very clear. Are we together?
I want to get something clear, please. Are you here, sir?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, please speak louder.
Okay. I said I want to get something very clear.
Yes, please.
This the three dimensions. That's the CIA.
Yes.
Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If I understood you very well,
Yes.
is it that the confidentiality works directly with the technology, right?
Yes, please. Yes, please. To ensure you have. Go ahead.
Integrity now works directly with the policies and practice to ensure that the integrity of the
data
of your data
yes
is very secure. There must be policies and ensure that those policies are taken into cognizance and being adhered to strictly, right?
Very correct. Very correct.
Then availability, of course, the availability, the data. Who are those that are supposed to use the data? Is supposed to be the people.
Definitely.
All right. All right.
Yes, you actually got it very right. Okay, so and then in line with that, then we also remember the different states. The state, if data is in storage, is kind of in a very safe space, right? Storage and processing are in very safe state. However, if data is in transmission, that is where we have a lot of work to do. We are going to see it as we move forward. All right, now we shall discuss in a much more detail, about the CIA triad. Yes.
So I did not get that, from that the cube I was seeing.
Yes.
The upper part, storage, you've left this, it's like, Yeah, the processing, storage, and transmission. I
Transmission.
did not really take that.
Okay,
You
so
that, you that.
if,
Go
if,
ahead.
if you look at the gerund, we are, that is the different information states that data could be at a point in time, at every point in time. You know, data could either be in processing, meaning that it is in the process between one application or the other. Data has already been created, it's now being processed, or that data is in a storage state or is in transmission. So we are going to look at in a much more detail the different data state and how we could learn some tips and tricks on how to safeguard and protect, you know, the data in these different states. Okay. Now, this CIA triad, we are going to discuss in a much more detail here. Confidentiality, the principle of confidentiality here, we're looking at how to prevent the disclosure of information to unauthorized people. To unauthorized people. Confidentiality is to prevent the disclosure of information to unauthorized people.
Hello?
Resources.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm, I'm there, but it's like a guy is not here.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you come again? Can you come again with just your voice?
Okay, all right. I was saying that confidentiality, here we are discussing about the principle of confidentiality. What it says is that confidentiality prevents the disclosure of information to unauthorized people, resources, and processes. Another term for confidentiality is privacy. So when data is confidential, it means that data is private, okay? Now, some organizations need to train employees, rather organizations need to train employees about best practices in safeguarding sensitive information to protect themselves and the organization from attacks. So education, training, and awareness is quite very, very required when it comes to serious implementation and adoption of cybersecurity principles. Method used to ensure confidentiality include data encryption, authentication, and access control. What we mean by this, as encryption of data, it could mean data is being transformed and it now becomes in a format that even if a cyber criminal is able to break into system, then that data is not going to be in plain text. Okay, it's going to be either in hash or in a different form that it could be easy for that attacker, to read or make sense of the data. Authentication is, when accessing a particular system, you have to be authenticated by providing username and password or using what you have. What you have here, we means by maybe your fingerprint, thumbprint, or iris. Access control, it is ensuring that the right privilege has been put in place. Okay, it's been put in place. Right privilege, it means if you are tier one, if you are tier one, officer, you should only access tier one related information, or maybe access control also define what you can access in terms of what you can carry out on the data subject. Example, some people have access and then they can read. Some people can write, some people can execute. Or this has to be properly defined. If it is a Linux system, then of course 777 is what is required, and it depends on the scenario. So to ensure a very good mix of principle of confidentiality, so we use this method, data encryption. If you remember, we talk about hashing. Okay, we talk about hashing in the introduction to cybersecurity. So that is part of encryption. Authentication, this is creating a login system, enabling multi-factor authentication, and then access control as well. I explained that. Now, that is principle of confidentiality. Let us try and remember this. Method that we use to ensure confidentiality is data encryption, authentication, and access control. We shall actually see them in a much more broader way. Protecting data privacy. How do we protect the privacy of the data? So organizations collect large amounts of data, and much of this data is not sensitive because it is publicly available, like names and telephone numbers. This is actually available. I mean, you can go to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or any other social media platform and search, or you can even go to Google and actually look for, I mean, the information you're looking for. Other data collected, though, is sensitive. Sensitive information in data sensitive information is data protected from unauthorized access to safeguard an individual or an organization. So sensitive information entails, to some extent, even for personal data, it could be sensitive because it entails your financial data and your educational data, your employment data. So some information are very sensitive. So the sensitive ones are the ones that require protection and safeguard from you. All right. So controlling access control defines a number of protection schemes that prevent unauthorized access to computer. Okay. Network, database, or other data resources. So if you are operating in an organization, and of course you are interacting with the information system deployed in that organization, then you should know that access control is always available and is always there. All right, so you want to access computer? Yes, you have to provide, of course, login details for you to do that. Network at the same time, database or other data resources. So in that, we have to look at the concept of AAA. AAA, it means authentication, authorization, and accounting. Authentication will verifies the identity of the user so as to prevent unauthorized access. Identity of the user, of course, is actually it means that user must prove his or her identity with a username or ID. So you want to log on to Facebook account, you have to enter your username and password, phone number, or any means of identification that you used. Okay, that is authentication. And authentication, you can actually have so many things in that. I mean, it could be something that is your username or password, or something you have that is like a swipe card. If you are going to enter a particular room or in a hotel, or in an office, you have a swipe card that will just swipe and then the door will open so that you gain access into that building or facility. Something you are, that is your thumbprint, fingerprint, or maybe your iris, So these are different means of authentication, okay? Then authorization. Services determine which resources users can access, along with operations that users can perform. Authorization can also control when a user has access to a specific resources, if you are authorized to access a particular resources. And then the last one is accounting. When you access certain software or file or directory in a computer, there is a certain area in that computer that keeps track of all what you have accessed and what you do. We call it log or system logs. So system log is actually an implementation of accounting, whereby it will keep track of what users do, including what they access, the amount of time they access resources, and any changes made. So if you happen to maybe experience network administration or system administration, you will find this very handy. Sometimes if you are doing threat analysis or you want to know who is trying to bring your data down, I mean your network down, you start getting information from the system log. Most of the times, I can remember, sometimes when I was managing a network for, an organization. So I usually, the first thing I do in the morning after, logging into my laptop, I will just ensure that I check the router's log. Router's log will give me the list of IP addresses, the date, the location of the persons who are trying to gain access into my router. So that will actually, give me an idea on where they are, what are their IP addresses, if I can do anything to trace that. So it's very, very important. So it's very, very important. So I hope this is actually clear. Controlling access, we deal with AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. In authentication, it requires all users to identify themselves either by something they know, something they have, or something they are. In authorization, services determine which resources user can access, and in accounting, whatever you access as the system user, the system keep track of it in case of auditing or in case of conflict resolution or security alert. All these are quite handy when it comes to login. I hope it is clear. Now, additionally, confidentiality and privacy seems interchangeable. When we look at confidentiality and privacy, sometimes we consider them as synonyms. However, it depends on the context. But from a legal standpoint, they mean different things. Most privacy data is confidential. When data is private, then we say that data is confidential, but not all confidential data is private. So access to confidential information occurs after confirming proper authorization. So before you access confidential information, you might have been proven that you have the right authorization to access that. Financial institutions, hospitals, medical professionals, law firms, and businesses handle confidential information, right? Like you can go to bank and claim to own an account with that bank, and you might request data updates. So what will they ask of you? They will ask you to identify yourself. After you identify yourselves, it's like you are now being authorized, to fill that form, sign, and then they will cross-check the sign as well. So after that, they will be able to, to say that and they will allow you to, carry out that transaction on that particular piece of information. So that is what we are saying. Confidential information has a non-public status. Confidential, it means private. It's not a public information, right? So maintaining confidentiality is more of an ethical duty. So it's definitely ethical to maintain that. Privacy is the appropriate use of data. When organizations collect information provided by customers or employees, they should only use that data for its intended purpose. Okay, so in this particular scenario, I think I will just want to bring I want us to understand that there are different sophisticated technologies in the world that has the power to collect information from different sources on the internet and then make a copy of that particular data and store it on their database. So they get it from internet. So since it is from internet, it's already a public property. It's not confidential, okay? It's not private anyway. So we should be very, very careful on what we share on internet, especially nowadays. In fact, I want you to go and check. I will share a link with you so you can actually watch this particular video I'm referring to. Clearview AI. Clearview AI has that power. It uses sophisticated AI and algorithm, that that has the power to actually navigate, and surf around the internet, and after that, it collect all these pictures, it actually have access to, and then duplicate it and store it in the database of that system. And then, of course, they might tend to sell it or use it for any purpose. In fact, there are so many allegations against that company that they collected the data and sold it out to different organizations in the US. In fact, they sold it to United Arab Emirates. So it is important for us to understand all these things and to be able to create awareness around our friends and in our organizations. So this is quite important. There are a number of laws, of course, that protect citizens' data. And of course, in the US, there are many of them. So as I actually mentioned yesterday, even in Nigeria, we have a number of them. So it is going to be our civil duty to actually go and find out those laws and then study them very well, so we can know where to apply them in our daily lives. Now, that is about confidentiality. Now, integrity, principle of data integrity. In this, we are looking at the accuracy, consistency, and trustworthiness of data during its entire life cycle. So to ensure that data is, we ensure the integrity of the data, it means we have to just find out and ensure that the data is accurate, is consistent, and is trustworthy in terms of, who actually sent what, and what we actually receive is what, the initial, sender actually sent to us. Another term for integrity is quality. So the quality of data means the accuracy, the level of non-modification or alteration of it. The method that I use to ensure data integrity include hashing. I mentioned that, and we have seen that in the introduction to cybersecurity. Data validation checks, data validation checks, when you are filling a form, if a field is meant for text, then text should only be there. If a field is meant for number, that field should only accept number. If a field is meant for email, email should only go there. So that's what data validation checks means. Data consistency checks, as well as access controls. So these methods are used to ensure and to provide data integrity. Yes, please.
This about this data validation check.
Yes.
I not really understand the accuracy of what.
Okay, like I believe you have once filled so many forms online, right? You register on, you do registration online before, right? Okay, so when you are registering online, assuming you are filling a form of National Open University's website, you want to apply for admission, you have to register and fill the forms, right? So in the form, I believe there are so many fields. Some field will only accept your name, some field will accept your address, some field will accept your email, some field will accept your phone number, isn't it? So what we mean by data validation checks is that behind the scene, when you enter an email, there should be a piece of code that will check if the email you entered is correct. And if the email is not correct, that email will not be accepted, talk less of it to be stored in your database, in the database of the organization. So that is data validation checks, is to check the correct format of the data, as well as the data type, if it is correct as designed by the system developer. Okay? Ibrahim, is it clear?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so why do we need data integrity? So the need for data integrity varies based on how an organization uses that data. For example, Facebook does not verify the data that a user posts in a profile, isn't it? If whatever you post on your profile, it doesn't matter to Facebook. Does it matter? Of course it doesn't. Because this is social media platform. So whatever you feel like sharing, whatever you feel like letting other people know and see about you, that is up to you. It's not their business. A bank or financial organization assigns a higher importance to data integrity than Facebook does, of course. So transactions and customer account must be accurate. So whatever transactions you are going to be carrying out, and your account details actually has to be very, very correct, has to be accurate. Protecting data integrity is a constant challenge for most organizations. Loss of data integrity can render entire data resources unreliable or unusable. So in a case whereby data is lost and loss of data integrity actually will definitely render data resources unreliable or unusable. So this is actually very imperative, and it's very very, very correct. It means when an organization failed to protect the data integrity, so it's actually going to be a very catastrophic to them and to the trust that the people that actually interact with them actually going to have. So it's necessary, for organizations to ensure that integrity checks, and integrity check is a way to measure the consistency of a collection of data. A file, a picture, a record. Integrity check performs a process called a hash function to take a snapshot of data at an instant in time. So this integrity checks is done at the system level. We mostly don't have access to it, but it is done at the system level. I will shed more light on it when we come back from from this break. So we are going to stop at this moment, and please let's reconvene after a minute. Thank you.